Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to Theory and Theology. On this podcast, we talk about culture and spirituality and religion and different sorts of topics along those lines. Yeah, my voice is kind of weird, but this is how it sounds in the morning. I was drinking some water that I left near the window and some water bottles, and it's getting a little chilly lately, so the water's a little bit cold, and I guess a little chilly water first thing in the morning makes my throat sound strange. But yeah, hopefully things are going well for everybody. I recorded and posted an episode yesterday that I took down. It was about 36 minutes, I think it said. But I'm back to try to summarize that in a way that is kind of more similar to the style I want to use with recording. It didn't really come out the way that I had intended, but I think it's an important topic and helpful for people. So it was kind of along the lines of, like, kind of, I guess, an experience I'm kind of dealing with lately, but something that I know that a lot of people are probably dealing with, just kind of like surrounding like adjustment to things in life that are changing, and then kind of being aware of things that you've moved forward from, either if you got help for it and were able to cope with something that wasn't working well for you in your life, or finding some better direction or different methods to address things in life as they're coming up. And then how do you deal with that when maybe there's an adjustment point in your life that's kind of taking you back to not necessarily old methods, but old experiences, I guess I would say. So like I think I've spoken plenty about my experience with things that I didn't find beneficial in the Adventist realm that I grew up in. Mostly just the kind of the social dynamics of situations where people weren't too they weren't really too, I don't know if the word is not really caring, but they there wasn't really a lot of strictness surrounding the, I guess, like social, like conversation topics, surrounding like, people would gossip about each other, and things like that. Like it was pretty strict on other things, like, people would be pretty strict on themselves and kind of create like an environment of like, it wasn't necessarily like people motivating one another, but it did make it easier for the people who were wanting to live a lifestyle according to the church traditions to be able to kind of like have other people that were doing it around them. And people were not necessarily outwardly encouraging, but it was kind of like a sense of community, like you're not the only one trying to like do these things, so people could kind of talk about the struggle of it. But that was kind of like the floor was kind of open for that type of conversation, I guess. But another thing like that I noticed was, they were strict about all that kind of stuff, but when it came to a sense of maybe like safe and trustworthy community. I mean, I didn't really see much of that. I mean, it seemed like it was socially acceptable for people to just say whatever they want to say, do whatever, about whoever, about whoever's life, share whatever information anybody told anyone, or anything that somebody found out, anything from, if somebody was getting an abortion, or somebody got pregnant, or somebody was, fired, or somebody got a DUI, or if somebody, like things like that, that like maybe you would tell like a friend or family member, but you're usually not going to be like announcing it to like everybody, because it's not everybody's business. I often witnessed that happening to so many people, and I was always like, okay, I don't really feel like this is okay, And so when I did, move down to San Diego, I was, and before that, but, the more I stepped outside of the church realm and kind of started interacting with people who weren't part of that church, and, just live their lives however differently they wanted to live their lives, and it was fine. But I started seeing that, other people kind of valued the same things that I was valuing, where I was like, usually I would even speak up about it with different youth and college groups, and be like, look, like, I don't think this is okay. And people would, usually I would get the whole like, it's human nature, like humans have a hard time with this type of thing, and there's always going to be this there. And like, yeah, I understand that. I do understand that. But that was kind of like the answer that I kind of got from the majority of people, was like, we're not really going to try to not gossip. We're not really going to try to not, we're not going to really put our foot down about this. Like, but to me, I was like, okay, like that seems to be a more harmful or more problematic thing than somebody breaking the Sabbath, or somebody eating a piece of pork or whatever. It was like, to me, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, you would rather just follow all these rules, but then just treat people like this. And that was the general consensus I got. And I was kind of like, I can't really vibe with that. I don't really see value in being around people that you can't really be authentic around. Mind you, I'm not saying I never gossip. I'm not saying I never, say things about people, or kind of vent about situations where I'm like, maybe I probably shouldn't have been venting about that, to some different person, but, I do try to be aware of it, and I try not to. I don't think it's okay, to necessarily do that, because, but, I am also a big believer that if somebody does feel like they're a victim, or if they're experiencing, something where they're a victim, I don't think that victims need to be silent necessarily. So if somebody's being like abused or something like that, I wouldn't be like, oh, don't say anything about it, because, like, you're telling about somebody else's anger issues or whatever it may be. Like, I don't believe that. I believe that it's okay for people to speak out against when they're being wronged, and they can be loud about it. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that, but that's just my own personal opinion. But yeah, I definitely didn't gravitate towards that style of socializing. So I kind of got away from that with the people that I was kind of interacting with outside of church, like either through grad school or jobs, work, volunteer work, moving, like when I moved to San Diego, I was at a different grad school, and then met some other people around town, either through work or just other stuff I was doing. And I kind of noticed, outside of the Adventist community that I was kind of raised in, people weren't really like that all the time. Like, it wasn't as socially acceptable, because people were like, ooh, like, that's kind of like, you can't really trust people that are like that. And like, I was kind of like, oh, like, that's kind of how I believe about it, like on that level. I was like, it was more important to me to think about, like, how I'm treating people, how people feel, if they feel like accepted, or like if they can trust people. I feel like that to me is more important of a sense of community than, let's all, not eat bacon. It's like, I mean, I get it, but it's just kind of like I feel like the priorities maybe were not really in the best of places, because that was really something where I was like, okay, like I don't really feel like I really want to be around the people of the church if they're going to be like this. And so fast forward, when I was talking about the adjustment pieces of things, moving back into an old neighborhood, being nearby a lot of people who were part of the church interactions and kind of interacting and mingling with them. I've had to come into the situations and be like, look, like I know how socially this works. I was raised in this culture, and I've had to literally just be like, if we're going to be hanging out, it doesn't work for me, to be, bashing people. Like if I'm hanging out with, person A, B, and C, I don't see why the whole time we're going to sit around and talk about person, like people X, Y, and Z, like why would I want to meet up with people just to sit and talk about other people that I don't even talk to or don't even really know firsthand what they're dealing with right now? Like to me, that's not a valuable, experience, like, yeah, I like to catch up. And if people need support, or if it's like, oh, like, unfortunately this person has cancer, or like something where it's kind of like maybe they might need more support from other people. I mean, it's not that I don't care, but it's like usually I'd rather directly hear from somebody how they're doing. I mean, I will ask how other people are doing, but it's kind of like, I just want to know, like, are they doing okay? And if they're not, that does suck, but I don't need to know like all the details. Like, I think it's okay for someone to be like, maybe they're in a struggle right now, and that doesn't have to go into the details of what's going on. I wouldn't ask more questions. Like, it's a little different for me if somebody's having a good time and things are going well for them. Then I feel like, okay, like I'd like to hear, like, tell me the good news, even if it's still kind of none of my business, but it's kind of like, oh, they got into this like program, this school, they're, they got this great job, they got this, they just bought a brand new car, like something that's like, fun, good news, not even from a judgmental perspective or a jealous perspective, just somebody just, speaking about it. But, I don't really know. I mean, I've talked to people about it. I've had to just actively be like, look, if we're going to be hanging out, we can't be gossiping. I mean, yeah, people are going to say stuff, but it's like, I kind of came to the conclusion that, I've given it some sample trials, and, it's just hard with setting boundaries with that kind of thing with people. Because I guess the last time, it was kind of like, instead of people not gossiping, they were still gossiping, but giving a disclaimer that they're going to gossip. And it's kind of like, that's not what I meant. Like, I don't want to know that you're going to tell me something that I don't want to hear. I just want you to not tell me, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, I'm over here trying not to be rude, but I felt like, I did a pretty decent job trying to, set up the expectations, because I mean, there are a lot of times where I come to LA to catch up with certain, church group people, and it's like, I won't know a thing about the people that I'm even seeing, but I will know everything about any negative part of anybody else's life that they've been in contact with. And I'm like, it's draining. Like, I don't want to hear about it anyways. Like, in my free time, I'm not really trying to like hear about everybody in the world's life problems, it's like I hear about that all day anyway. So it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a challenge. And so, yeah, I mean, like, for me, like, I'm not like a very rigid person. Like, when I am, trying to set boundaries with people, I'm not very rigid about it. Like, I try not to be like getting angry or like, just upset about, people not being good with boundaries. But to me, that's not that's just like, okay, like it's not the same thing. But say if you told somebody, like, I don't know, it could be just like anything, it doesn't have to be gossip. But if you tell somebody, we can hang out, but you can't, take, Sharpie markers and draw all over my car, because, it's, it's vandalism, and, you do it every time, and, I have to go get it fixed. I never charge you for it, but it's kind of a jerk thing that, this isn't even like, I'm just making up some stupid situation. And then say you meet up with your friends and you're hanging out in a parking lot, and then a friend is like, look, I'm going to take out my Sharpie and I'm going to draw this on your car. It's like, didn't we just talk about this? You know what I mean? It's like, we had a long, lengthy conversation about you not doing this. And I understand, impulse control is difficult. It's hard to break habits. But also, it's kind of like, well, if you're telling me that you're going to do it, then you're aware that you're doing something that I literally don't like, and you're still going to be doing it. And, it's kind of like, oh my gosh. But that's kind of what I'm dealing with now. It's kind of this, like, debate with myself between, like, do I really want to be involved? I mean, I've kind of narrowed it down to, okay, yeah, I'll be involved if we're playing sports. So if you want to go meet me at the gym, if you want to go, jog at the beach, or play some soccer, or play some tennis, or play some basketball, let's do that, because we won't be talking. Or let's go to a movie and be in the movie theater and we won't be talking. I'm not going to be going out to dinner. I'm not going to be going out for coffee. I'm not going to be going out for, just like sitting around at the beach, bonfires, beach vespers, church lunches, all that kind of stuff that just opens the door for people to sit and talk crap, like that's kind of the line that I've had to set with certain people, not every single person, but the specific ones who just can't really control themselves. That's kind of where I am with things. And so I'm like, okay, like, I'm not completely going to write people off, but, I've still got to do what's best for me, and it's not best for me to be around people who want to tell me every single negative thing about every single person I've ever known in my life. I mean, I care about those people. I still care about them, even if I don't talk about them, and I would rather hear good things about them. And if there's nothing good to share and I'm not in contact with them and they haven't directly told me all these things going on in their lives, if they're not contacting me, telling me, then they probably don't want me to know. And if I'm not contacting them, then I'm not making the effort to catch up. And so I don't think other people need to be telling me, it's a negative thing, I don't need more negativity, so that's kind of how I'm viewing this. It's not easy to set boundaries with people. It's not easy to like be, forthcoming with people about things. Believe it or not, I did get a lot of pushback, people kind of telling me, like, this is just how it's going to be, this is just how we are, this is how we've always done things. And I'm like, I know, but I'm saying that I don't think it's okay, and I think it would be nicer if people can make a greater effort to not do it, because, a lot of us, kind of we're kind of like moved back to LA, we all kind of left for a long time, and then a lot of us are back. And so it's like, well, I know the things that didn't work for me, so why would I want to go back to the specific stuff that I literally was so happy to leave from those types of environments, And so, I don't find value in it, especially if it's like, I'm going to be spending a couple days after a little bit frustrated with the situations. It's like, I could have just stayed home, and played video games, or like watched like women's soccer or whatever. Like, I was perfectly fine by myself at the house, like I wasn't really like dying for interaction like that. To me, that's not really good quality. And I'm not saying that like I don't want to hear about people's lives, but I feel like there's like a fine line. Like, for example, there's some people that maybe I catch up with when I'm with other people, and they kind of know the person, like we all know a scenario of something going on. And if somebody in those scenarios kind of ask me like, hey, how are things going? Have you talked to this person? I've been trying to reach out, but they just haven't returned my calls. And I'm just like, okay, like, yeah, we talked, like, you should give them a call or whatever, or they'll be available this day or whatever, or things still aren't going better, or things still aren't, just things like that, where it's like, I feel like that's maybe even too much, but it's like, that's kind of my limit with things. It's like, okay, well, if we're already all caught up, because we already all talk to each other anyways, and it's like somebody in the friend group who's just not there at the time, that they would have told that information anyways, or if they would have said that in front of the person, then I feel like it's kind of a little different than like just talking about people who literally I'm never gonna call or, try to see on purpose, or who aren't going to call me. It's like, I don't think anybody needs to, be telling me about that. And I do know, people say, it's insecurities, it's, trying to fill the space, and I'm just kind of like, I don't know, like I've gotten so used to just, being around people that I think maybe it's different too, because most of the people I know work in psych. So we're all kind of like a little bit like, okay, like I'm already pretty drained, and, a lot of us kind of value, maybe like when there's confidentiality, or you can just like say what you need to say, or like be how you actually are around certain people, because it's your time off and you're just kind of like hanging out during that time off. A lot of us, in the psych field kind of value that. It's like, I don't have all the time in the world to hang out with people, so when I can actually hang out and see them, I'm gonna, want it to be, a valuable time together. And I feel like just our values are a little different. Like the people that I grew up with, a lot of their values are a little bit different. Or maybe they've never even been in settings too often where, they weren't, around people who were just like kind of just gossiping about everybody. That could be it too, because a lot of my friends I grew up with, none of them really work in psych. And so I think people who work in certain fields too, you kind of gravitate towards what's okay and what's not okay within that field a little bit. Like in psychology, it's not okay to just be like taking people's information, like your client's information, and just like exposing it all over the place to everybody. Like usually it's like, if you're not talking about it in a productive manner with your team of how to help somebody, and then actively putting those, plans, putting those plans into action, then usually you're not talking about the clients. Like maybe a little bit, you'll be like, wow, this person's a little difficult to work with. But other than that, you're not venting about them too much, unless maybe it's to like a very, very, very close friend in the office outside of office hours. You're not venting to them too much about your clients. Like there's a lot that's not considered professional. And I think a lot of us in psych, we take that kind of like mindset from the job, and we're like, hey, like in my life too, I'm not going to be just like running around just like whatever somebody told me or whatever I experienced when I was with somebody, let me go tell everybody about this. Like I think you kind of get used to practicing and not like talking about those kind of situations, and maybe not everybody does practice that. But it is something to practice. Like I've practiced it and had to get better at not doing it, especially when I started socializing with the non-Adventist people that I was meeting. I realized, hey, people aren't like this, and this isn't something that, is going to be helpful for me to develop relationships, stronger relationships with people, if they aren't if they can't trust you, and it's not like I have any burning desire really to be like talking about other people's problems too much, it's like, do I ever do it? Yeah, but I mean, it's not really something that I feel like is okay to really be doing. But yeah, that's kind of where I am with things. And I'm slightly disappointed with it, with the choice that I'm having to make to kind of like maybe back up a little bit, because I was kind of like testing the waters and kind of like maybe we can actually we can actually do this. And I can kind of see straight through things sometimes. Like, people are always like, I want to see if you're okay, and we can pray about something if you want to pray. And then usually that opens the door for people to talk about what's actually going on. But then I already know, okay, well, if you're already going to be opening up to me about what everybody else talked to you about when you were praying for them, what makes me think that you're not going to be talking to the next person about whatever I just told you? It's kind of like, and especially when somebody like literally knows that I'm trying to set boundaries around something, and then they're just kind of like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be doing this thing. By the way, I'm going to be drawing on your car with a Sharpie. That kind of, it's kind of like, it's kind of a disappointing, frustrating situation to have to deal with. But I was a little hesitant to invite people back into my life for that reason, because I just don't think it's healthy behavior. I don't see how it really benefits anybody. But, it seems like people aren't ready to stop doing it anytime soon. I'm drinking this water. Seems like people aren't ready to stop doing it anytime soon. So, like, I can wait and see if they ever will. Or, I don't really count on it, though, because I don't know. I try to meet people where they are to some extent, but then it's like, I'm not trying to get into some situation where I feel like I'm going backwards. Like, I've tried pretty hard to get my life to a lot of places where I do want it to be. As far as like socially and with different types of relationship dynamics, I think I've been able to definitely meet some awesome people. And like I'm saying, I don't expect things to be like perfect, but it's like, literally, you can like think about that example about somebody drawing on your car. It's like, if you went and hung out with somebody after you just had this whole long conversation about why I don't want to hang out with you because whenever we meet, you draw on my car, and then they literally come like with their Sharpie and they're like, look, I know we talked about this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. It's kind of like, do you still really keep going full force, or do you back off a little bit and be like, look, you clearly didn't you can't really do this yet, you're clearly not we're not on the same page. And everybody's dealing with their own stuff. I get it, but I'm trying not to let other people's problems get in my way. I just got out of, as we all know, the house from hell kind of situation. So I'm not trying to necessarily dive back into any type of, I'm drinking coffee now too. I'm not trying to dive back into any kind of situation that resembles, people with poor boundaries. If people have their own problems, I feel like I'm glad for them if they're working on those problems. I don't want to be experiencing, the, what do you call it? Like the runoff. I don't want to be experiencing the runoff of other people's issues if it's kind of crossing the boundaries and, the goals I've set for my own life. I mean, if somebody needs me for something, if I can be of support, to whatever capacity I have remaining, within my own willpower, or will to help people. I'm down for that. But at the moment, I don't think I have much capacity to put up with too many negative social experiences or social experiences where people are exhibiting poor boundaries. I can't really justify stepping fully into something like that. I've been studying a little bit about codependency and still studying about like attachment styles and things like that. And yeah, it's hard, I think it's hard to set boundaries with people. Because at the end of the day, like, ideally, I could not set the boundaries. And I could just, it would be almost easier to be like, I'm not gonna set the boundaries, or I'm going to ignore what I need for myself. I don't feel like I'm hurting for friends or hurting for social connection in a way where I'm like isolated, or when I'm isolated is kind of on purpose, but I don't feel like I'm isolated or lonely. I don't feel like I'm isolated or lonely or, necessarily needing, people in my life who just, just don't want to, I don't even want to say it's disrespectful. It's just more so like we're not really on the same wavelength, and I don't really have the patience right now to kind of like deal with that or go into a situation where multiple somebodies, can't control themselves. Like, I'd rather just not deal with it, it's like I don't have to. If you hear typing, I'm trying to, it's about time to check into work. But yeah, that's mostly kind of what I was talking about before that I deleted, because I feel like the way it came out was more like me venting about the frustration of the situation without really talking through kind of more the way that I'm kind of trying to organize things in my life. Like, I've found it definitely beneficial to have friends that, we all kind of try to build each other up. We're all kind of, nobody's really comparing to each other, and it's subtle, but, I feel like, everyone's gonna maybe compare on occasion, or gossip on occasion, or say something, on occasion, or be too direct on occasion, or be a little rude on occasion, or maybe drink a little too much on occasion. Like, all those types of things on occasion, it's fine. But it's like when it happens 3, 4, 5 times in one setting where somebody's literally telling you, hey, like, I'm going to draw on your car, even though we just talked about, they're having a whole conversation with you about how they're going to, like, go past the boundaries that you just talked about that you're trying to set. To me, that's kind of a red flag kind of situation where it's like, okay, if this is how an early first interaction where you're putting your best foot forward is going to look, how's it going to look when we're actually in a heated argument? How's it going to look when we're in a tense situation? how's it going to look when we actually start hanging out and going places and doing things, and we're maybe not all in a good mood, and somebody says something or does something, and now this person goes and starts blabbing it all over to some other group of people. It's like, how's that really gonna look? It's like, what benefit do I get out of that? And especially if I'm not hurting for friendships or outings, or I'm not lonely, and I feel like perfectly fine with the hobbies and interactions that I do have on a regular basis, then I don't see any real reason to invite that into my life again, when I know it already didn't work for me in the first place. Why would I welcome it again when I see the people who were involved in this before now still doing the same things, but this time they know that I don't like it, and this time they know that they're doing it still, and they're telling me that they're still just going to do it. Like, to me, that's just like a big, like, yeah, like they say, actions speak louder than words. And like, if people say, yeah, I'm gonna stop doing this, but then they're like, hey, like, here's my Sharpie, I'm taking out my Sharpie now, and I know we talked about this Sharpie and how you don't want me drawing on your car, and I know last time you had to pay so much money to get the paint redone or fixed because of what I drew, and I know that I'm never going to pay for it, but you know what, I'm just going to take out this Sharpie again and draw this picture on your car because this is just what I'm doing. And it's just like, you're just watching them like draw on your car. You're like, seriously? It's like, you come back into that situation again when they invite you to come hang out again. Like, how many times do you have to have the conversation when you know that they know because they're telling you that they know? So it's kind of like, that's kind of how I'm seeing it. Like, I try to put a weird scenario to it just to see how ridiculous it sounds. It kind of removes me a little bit out of like the actual situation that's going on. And when I think about it, I'm like, this sounds ridiculous. Like, if somebody came to me and told me like, hey, whenever I hang out with this person, we talk about them not doing this, and then they do it. Literally, they tell me they're about to do it and they start doing it. It's like, I don't even know. Like, I don't know. Like, what should somebody even expect? What should somebody really expect out of that? It's like, it's hard, for people, but I feel like there are other options. We can still hang out. I'm not saying we can't ever hang out. We can still hang out, but we don't have to hang out in settings where we're just sitting around talking. If the sitting around and talking is not something that I want to do, because we're just going to be sitting around and talking about the things that I don't want to sit around and talk about. Like, literally everything that I don't want to talk about is what these people want to talk about. And it's like, this is weird. It's weird. It's inappropriate. It's weird. It's just weird. It would be just like, okay, if we do just all get together because we have like a car club, and this is what we do because we all hang out with the car club, so we all bring our cars together and get like little lawn chairs and sit around and talk about our cars, and somebody brings out a Sharpie every time and starts drawing on my car. That was maybe 20 years ago, and then I come back to town and I'm like, look, I know that like we haven't hung out for a while, and you guys have been contacting me to come back to the car club, and so let me come back to the car club, but just don't draw on my car with Sharpies anymore, because that was the one thing where I was like, I don't need to be in this car club because y'all keep drawing on my car. And then you come into the car club and you sit there, and like 5 minutes in, it's like, look, I'm going to draw on your car. I'm just going to do it. But it doesn't even happen just once, and then there's no real even apology after it. It's like, no, let's do it again. Oh, you know what? I do know that you don't want me drawing on your car, but I got this different color Sharpie that I'd like to use now, and I'm going to use that one to draw on your car. Like, literally, that's the exact situation that I was dealing with. And it's like, maybe we can hang out without our cars, or maybe I come with a bicycle instead, or I Uber there, so you can't, so there's no car in place, and I can sit there with my lawn chair and talk about my car, but my car's not there because, I didn't bring it. And so now we can sit and talk, but you can't draw in my car because I don't have my car. You know, we can sit and talk about our cars, but I can't draw on my car because I didn't. You can't draw on my car because I didn't bring it. And so that's kind of how I see this. It's like, well, if we aren't in a situation where we have to sit and talk, then there's no way we're going to sit and talk about people. Like when you're in the middle of a tennis match or in the middle of a basketball or soccer game or like running or something, you're not really going to have the energy to be sitting and like talking crap about people. And that at least is more productive. And, you know, it's kind of interesting. I was a little surprised at the pushback that I got when I even mentioned, you know, that like that's just not it's not a productive way for me to spend my free time, especially on a weekday, hanging out right after work. I don't want to hang around with people who just want to gossip, you know, like, and it's not even like the fun kind of like silly gossip where you're just like, you know, there is some kind of gossip that's kind of like, okay, like this is stupid, or like we're just like talking about each other, you know, and just like giving each other a hard time a little bit. Like that's kind of funny sometimes, but it's like, you know, I mean, like, I don't know. I've been so many years past having to deal with this type of thing that I can really see it for what it is. And I'm like, it's not going to get better, you know, if people feel like at the first time they see you in years, that they don't even have to like try with things that you literally mentioned. I mean, I literally sent it in writing saying that having these kind of conversations bothers me to the point where it physically impacts me. Like, I think it's sickening to sit around and hear people just trashing other people. Like, it's like not okay. It's some kind of issue, you know, that people have that, you know, it's just not okay, you know, like it impacts my sleep, it impacts my energy levels. I find it draining, like after I'm done in those types of hangouts and I go home or whatever, I'm drained. I don't want to talk to anybody. I feel negative about hearing all this negative junk, you know, and then I'm kind of like, you know, I could have stopped it. I could have told them to stop, or I could have left early, you know, anything like that. I'm just kind of like that. None of that was worth the while. And I explained explicitly like why, you know, I don't value any of that anymore. And, you know, for people to just be like, well, I'm still just going to say it anyways. And they're alerting you that they're going to say stuff that you don't want to hear after you just talked about it for like an hour and texted about it for like 2 hours the day before. It's like, I don't know, man. Like, that's not really too much the direction I want to go. And I think previously I would have been like, you know, I grew up with these people since we were kids. You know, I was, you know, raised around these situations. I can handle it. It's not, you know, yeah, like they're doing this, but that's kind of their choice, and like I don't have to participate. But I think I feel like it's toxic. It's a toxic method of social interaction. And I'm not necessarily talking about the little, like, okay, somebody says like one little thing, you know, and it's kind of like, okay, but like, what do I benefit from sitting around 4 hours talking about other people's business? You know, like 4 hours, you know, and then you want to contact me to go do this again? It's like, no, like I'm not. Like, tell me when you get your tennis racket, or tell me when you're bringing a basketball or something, and I'll hang out with you then outside on a basketball court or whatever else. But that's kind of where I am with things. No, I don't want to join your church service, and I don't want to go to your beach vespers because it's going to be the same thing. It's just kind of, I don't know. I mean, that's half the reason why I don't really associate with the church. It's not really so much the church that I have any kind of real issue with. Like, I can take or leave a sermon that I don't believe everything of, you know, I can take or leave like a tradition that I'm like, okay, I'll do this out of respect for the people around me. But when I go home, I'm getting a bacon cheeseburger, you know? It's like, I don't really care. I don't feel like that really affects me too much, but I don't know. Like, I think even as a kid, I was kind of aware at a young age that that was just something that didn't resonate with me just naturally. And I do think that it's important to like pay attention to my gut, pay attention to, you know, just my own natural preferences towards things, and not really let someone else or groups of other people try to like pull me into that, you know. Like, I'm just kind of like, you know, I'd rather spend that time meditating together or doing any other thing would have been more productive than that. If we were randomly digging holes in the yard looking for worms, that would have been more productive. You know, like there are plenty of things that are far more productive, but I mean the whole time it wasn't like 4 hours worth of trashing people, but within that 4 hours there were multiple instances where people felt compelled to bring up that they were now going to literally start gossiping. Like, they literally said it. They literally said it, and they literally did it. And so I'm just like, I don't even know what to do with that. Like, I didn't see that coming. But if that's kind of the viewpoint, then, or the method that I'm working with right now, I don't really see any real reason to do that anymore. It's a waste of time and energy. I mean, it's a couple days later and I'm still thinking about it, so I'm just like, this is stupid. Like, I don't need my energy to be going towards this. And so that's kind of where I am with it. I didn't get too much past, you know, making a decision to not completely cut people off, but to, you know, go more towards what I prefer, which is, you know, I am trying to be more active. The thing that I did like about the Adventist church, you know, is that people really do care about health. And so it's kind of nice to be around people who, you know, want to focus on, you know, different like dietary types of skills, and like not like starving yourself, but like different kind of like health methods for like how you eat, or different health methods for how you you know, how you eat, how you you know, sleep, how you that's mostly it, like eat, sleep, you know, exercise. So, you know, like, I like talking about that. Like, if people want to give different tips about how to improve sleep, or how to improve, you know, your energy, or how to improve, you know, your mindset, or how to improve, you know, if we're talking about how to improve stuff, I'm all for it, you know. But I'd rather talk about how do we improve our own individual lives, not how do we talk about how other people are screwing up their own lives, or how other people's lives have other screwed up parts to them. Like, I don't really care about all that, you know. Everyone's gonna do what they're gonna do. Like, what do I care? You know, if some person that I know is doing something that the church doesn't like, I don't really care. I'm doing plenty of things that the church doesn't like, and I don't really care. Like, it's not really like up to them how I live my life. But yeah, that's kind of my take on my new social surroundings. Like, it's a bit unfortunate and a bit disappointing, and a bit just kind of frustrating to be like, okay, like, I'm not trying to write people off, but y'all gotta understand where I'm coming from with this stuff. Like, I'm pretty serious. Like, I'm not trying to let anybody get in my way. Like, I am moving in a certain direction. If you don't want to go in that direction, or if you want to pop up in my way and start getting in the way, then sorry, I'm not going to allow it, you know? Um, and so, I owe that to myself, to at least do what I think I need to be doing for my own self, my own energy. The big piece is definitely going to be the job change. But in the meantime, I don't want anything else getting in the way either. It's going to be little stuff like that, like family, friends, whatever. And like I said, I'm not trying to write people off. Nobody's doing anything to a point where I'm just like, this is just, like, yeah, I wrote off the roommates from before and stuff, of course, like, block their numbers. I don't even want to hear from them or talk to them or whatever. Like, I've kept their numbers in case I actually need to reach out later, but, block them, like, I don't need them really in my life. But yeah, I'm kind of curious to know how this kind of stuff is going to unfold, because now it's a new social setting. I mean, yeah, but yeah, I'm not really I'm trying to think if there's any more I had to say about this. I mean, it's kind of like early phases, but that's kind of how far I've gotten, really, is tried to set boundaries, didn't really work. I'm not going to be giving like 30 more chances. I just don't have the energy for that, and I don't find it necessary. And then outside of that, just trying to do what I need to do for my own energy and peace of mind. I think last night I have this like I don't know what you call it. It's kind of like a disco ball, but it's like a newer version. So it has these like, it's not a disco ball. It's kind of like one of those party light ball things, like that just like spins and shows all the like different light colors and patterns and stuff. And so I opened one of those and I turned on that thing last night, and I was kind of just like chilling with it and like with it on with some music on. I was listening to some Carcassi music. I like classical guitar kind of stuff, but he has these like lessons, but had, I guess I should say. So I was basically listening to that, and then got to do a lot of meditating and things, and this was probably from like 8:30 p.m. I had one of my church friends calling me, like around that time, and I was just like, I'm busy, like like, dude, just and I was actually kind of worried. I was like, because I got a message and I was like, I'm not even going to check it. But I thought it was going to be like something that was way more overwhelming. Like, it wasn't, but I thought it was going to be somebody, telling me more stuff that I don't want to hear about, or, being like maybe a little too, what do you call it? When somebody's kind of like, not clingy, I don't know what the word is, but yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't think any of us saw our lives being like the way that they are, like, not necessarily in a negative way. I'm just saying, like, I think before we all moved, before kind of like college age, we all kind of were like, what's our life gonna be like, when we're older and everything. Like, I had this friend that we always talked about, living together, getting a house together. I mean, that's what we said. I don't know if we really meant it. And, these other friends that I don't really know what they were planning to do, but I don't think any of us expected to leave LA. I don't think any of us, once we left, expected to come back. and for us to all be back at the same time, that's real weird too. So, I'm kind of going with the flow of it, but I'm really trying hard to like do what works for me and avoid the stuff that doesn't, like, yeah, push myself a little bit, on some levels with some stuff where it's like, okay, like I need to kind of like do this, and it's like easier for me to not, like there's stuff that I'm trying to develop and like improve at, but I really don't want this kind of stuff, dragging me backwards into some kind of unnecessary social settings. Like I don't see any way that I can even start to think about it as being any way beneficial. I've thought about it for a couple days now, and I'm like, no, it's just, there's no way around it. Like, it's just not gonna be able to be part of my life. I mean, there are definitely scenarios where I'm gonna have to deal with it if like my parents decide to have over certain family friends or whatever, but it's like I'm kind of out, like I'm not playing that game anymore. And it's kind of weird for me how difficult it is to make good decisions. It's easier in my head to just be like, okay, I'll just put up with the BS. To me, that sounds easier. I don't like having to explain myself over and over again, and I don't like to have to talk about boundaries that were already set over and over and over again. It's kind of like, all right, this is what's best for me for now, so I'm just going to do what's best for me for now. And leave it at that, There was this one, I guess a meditation that, there's this one that was like, that I came across yesterday where it was saying like, you're perfect, and part of it was kind of like, think about all the resistance that comes up from your ego of like when you tell yourself that. And not to say like you're perfect, you have nothing to work on, that you're never going to work on yourself, or that you're never going to continue to like develop parts of yourself or whatever, but just even when you say you are perfect, there's like, most of us, our minds find so many different ways to criticize ourselves, and bring ourselves down, that it becomes very apparent when you try to use like an affirmation like that. And so I do find things like that interesting. To me, that's more beneficial to like talk about that kind of stuff, or like just like actual real things that are going on with ourselves, not necessarily other people's problems. Like what was it? What was that OPP song? I'm not down with OPP. Well, I guess it was other people's property, not other people's problems. But yeah, but yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm trying not to make it into some gigantic thing, but yeah, it's just kind of interesting how difficult it is to try to do good things for our own selves. There is a bit of pushback. It's like an internal pushback I get from myself, where I'm like, this is how you usually do it, and it's like, yeah, I know, this is how I usually do it, but no, not this time. I'm probably gonna be having to make a lot of decisions like this, honestly. Not necessarily social decisions, but just like decisions where I'm just making decisions in a different way than how I usually do. I'm trying something different, on a lot of different levels, and it feels weird, It doesn't feel negative, but like my mind doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, well, what do I do now? It's like, what do I do with this now? Like, I'm still thinking a lot. There's a lot of thinking. Because, my mind's used to having other scenarios kind of blocking it up. So I'm like, well, now that I don't have this weird social dynamic that I have to force myself to deal with, now what? I have more energy to do other stuff that I need to be doing. So that's where I am now. That's my better explanation. And hopefully it was helpful, interesting, and thanks for listening.